What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Hope you're doing well. Now, viewers and listeners should be forewarned that my guest today is none other than an actual supervillain. You read that right. You heard that right. Today on the show is none other than Mr. Agitator himself, Nicholas Santiago. How are you doing today?
Oh, hi. I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I cannot complain. Thank you so much for being on the show from your evil layer of sound. Now, Mr. Agitator himself is the lead singer of V is for Villains. Can you tell us a little bit about V is for Villains?
Well, we're a costumed band of supervillains that travel the country, kind of like a circus, in search of villainy and fun. That's what we do. That's who we are. Hire us at your own risk.
Now, I have to ask, are you really psyched for the return of conventions and your shows?
Oh my God. More than anything. You know, I've done two conventions prior to this interview and post shutdown. And, you know, it's just been amazing seeing everybody and being a part of that atmosphere again. I just, you know, sometimes they say you don't know how much you love until you lose it, right? So, you know, just like anything else, when you're a performer, professional performer, it can sometimes become a little mechanical where you're doing the shows. It's like, okay, I got to be here and here and here. You know, after what happened last year, I think that's gone. I think it's just so happy and so everyone's just so excited to be back to doing it. You know, every band that we came across that we just played with over the weekend at Evil Expo, everyone was just so happy to be involved and to be a part of it. You know, we all became a little like band con family again. It's great.
Now, I've been to a few conventions in my time, and they can be utterly packed, like literally shoulder to shoulder as you go through the different booths and whatnot. And I can, you know, I've seen video of some of your shows as well. And yeah, they're packed in there as well. So those first shows that you've already played so far, like what was that like, you know, as far as like, were people, you know, as far as you a performer, were you a little bit, you know, nervous about being on stage after, you know, after a year and a half of a pandemic? And did you see that kind of relate to, you know, the fans as well? Everyone, you know, kind of like, you know, kind of squeezing in, hopefully not touching anyone, or was it more a cathartic release for not just yourself, but all the fans there?
I mean, I would say it was more of a cathartic release, almost like a sigh of relief. I wasn't super concerned. I'm 100% vaccinated. And I know that, you know, there are those out there who are and who aren't. It didn't really factor into my thought process too much. I kind of walked from it and said, hey, you know, life is just like that sometimes. It's going to throw what it wants to throw. I'm in free fall. I can't control it. I'm just going to do the best that I can to be as safe as I can and to put on the most entertaining experience that I can. Those are the things that were going through my head, was more reacclimating as a performer to something that I haven't done in a while. Oh my God, can I still do this? And then in December, I broke my back again and had spinal surgery. So I was kind of going, you know, from 0 to 100, revving up with physical therapy, revving up with healing. So I think I was more in that mindset of, okay, we're going to heal. And I think on a personal level, I applied that to society as a whole, where I said, yeah, I'm healing through this thing, but they're healing too. We're all healing together at the same time. That's what I felt. I felt everybody coming together and just, it's so nice to see each other. It's so nice to be in this room. I think, you know, there are a couple of people that I came across that were a little less enthusiastic, and, you know, in my opinion, you just respect that space and you just say, hey, I feel you. I won't shake your hand. I won't hug you. That's okay. I get you. I know why you feel that way. I'm going to respect why you feel that way. You know, so to me, I think I felt a sigh of relief. I was more worried about how my performance was going to be. Am I going to mess this up? Am I going to go up there and they're all going to go, oh, what on earth was that? You know, like maybe they should have stayed pandemic retired. Hey, you know, so those are the things that are going through my head, you know, maybe the more selfish side of it. But, you know, the other one, the fear, not really. That didn't really factor into my thought process too much. And because I had surgery, I was eligible for vaccination earlier than most. And I jumped on it the second they said, hey, go do it. I was like, okay. And I go get my shots.
Now, for anyone who has, is unaware of V is for Villains, and they were to like walk into a room and all of a sudden there's a V is for Villains show, what would they expect?
That's one of my favorite things because I can always tell the stragglers. You can tell the strays in the room, the ones that are there and they're excited and they know what they're about to get, and the ones that maybe just wandered in from the side of the bar and are going, oh, why, what? Those are my favorite people. Those are my favorite people to play with because then I jump off the stage and I just go up to them and start singing and, try to get them involved in this experience because that's what we try to provide is an experience. I don't want you to just come to a show and go, I mean, if that's what you want to do, I don't care. It's fine with you. But, but I want you to be engaged. I want you to enjoy this communal experience we're all sharing. So to me, I like it when people wander in that aren't a part of that, and I get to kind of go and show them what we're doing and why and how and get them involved, and become a part of the show, make your own mask, sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question really, but that's what you get.
I think so, but I do have to ask, when you go to, a rock show or, in your case, an industrial show, you expect to see a rock or industrial type crowd, but you're playing, I think primarily at, conventions. So,
right.
How would you, describe the crowd, as in comparison to, say, for lack of a better analogy, a Nine Inch Nails crowd?
That's a great question. I think we still do clubs. We'll be playing at Bottom Lounge August 28th in Chicago. So I do still like to connect with the club crowd, and I do still like to do those things. Though you're right, I feel like we're primarily these days kind of doing more conventions steadily. And I think the crowds are very different. I think they're very different. In one setting, you have kind of the more adult crowd that are used to patronizing these shows. And then, and then the other hand, you have what can sometimes be a little bit more of a child-friendly experience. Though we like to push that envelope a lot because my parents didn't censor shit. I grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street and all that stuff. They didn't censor anything that I watched or I did. So, for me, it's kind of like, your kid's going to hear it. If you don't want them to hear it, take them out of the room. Though we have covered Closer in the past, Nine Inch Nails Closer at conventions. So we've done a little bit of the bleed over, and every time I'm like looking out there, I'm like, I see any kids out there? Because if I see a kid, we're changing those lyrics to I want to hug you like a stuffed animal. We're not, we're not doing the the true version, because I just can't do it. But I think the crowds. What I like about it that's similar to me is that they're all there to have fun, whether it's a club or whether it's a convention. But yeah, at the clubs, you don't see as many people in cat ears or, giant teddy bears chasing, stuff like
I do have to now apologize to all of our listeners who are now going to listen to Closer from Nine Inch Nails, and they're only going to hear I want to hug a stuffed animal. Sorry, not sorry. I cannot get that out of my head. I'm actually pretty sure that made the song even that much better.
Good.
but let's talk about your original music. Now there are, what is it, 3 full albums of original music for V is for Villains?
Yes, we do. We have 3 full-length albums of V is for Villains. The first one, Evolve or Die, was released in 2012. The second one is Murder in the Art, that was released in 2017. And most recently, Villains Never Die was released in 2019.
Now, V is for Villains isn't where this all started, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about Digital Mindy?
Gladly. So Digital Mindy, I started when I was 15. My brother and I started Digital Mindy together. I broke my back. I was paralyzed for quite some time. I had to kind of relearn how to walk and do all that stuff. And in the interim, I didn't have anything to do with my time because I wasn't going to school. I was, people become very scarce when you're in pain like that. I don't begrudge them any of that. It's just, you're in pain. It's kind of hard to watch, especially when you're a kid. People don't want to face their mortality. So, friends become scarce. schedules get conflicted. You're up till 7 a.m. You sleep when you can because you're in so much pain. Then back in the 2000s, early 2000s, when this happened, maybe even 2000, there was no regulation on painkillers or any of this. So they had me pumped full of drugs all the time. So I'm just sitting there. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't play PlayStation for the rest of my life. It didn't make any sense to me. It became not engaging anymore. So I just kind of started writing music. And I have no training. I have no real reason to be doing it. But I did. And what came out of it, that first 6 months of writing songs, was what ended up becoming Digital Mindy for a long time. And we probably played and toured on that band way more than we had any real right to, but there were a lot of great things that came out of it, licensing deals with MTV, tours with Pig, amazing Metro and House of Blues shows, and I Am Fest. We did a lot of cool stuff, and there's a lot of things from my teen years and my early 20s that I'm very, it's just really fond memories to me now. So, Digital Mindy, I think, and it's funny, I had a fan discover Digital Mindy recently, and I think just this morning, that fan shot me a message and said something along the lines of, I discovered Meet Mr. Agitator, which was the last Digital Mindy album. We released it in 2009, and that was the last Digital Mindy song I ever wrote. It was coincidental that I ended up taking the name and doing this. But, he said, I feel like Digital Mindy is V is for Villains, but like metal. It's like way harder, and you're screaming and it's like slamming. And he's like, and I feel like V is for Villains is like a pop fantasy fairy tale version of that. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way, but hey, cool.
I actually kind of see that. But yeah. I mean, to go from, Digital Mindy to V is for Villains. So how did that process start?
Well, I think I capped out. It was around 2009. And then when we released that album, that Meet Mr. Agitator album, we had a headlining show at the Metro in Chicago on a Saturday night, big venue for those of you that don't know. And, it was packed. It was jam packed with people, and just felt like a real high point for the band and for myself as a performer at that point. It just felt like we had taken it to its course, especially when you have 800 or 900 people in the room and you sell 17 CDs on your CD release show, and you go, wait a second, wait a minute. Something seems weird here. So I grabbed this fan. I found this fan on the street, and I was like, you little bastard, you tell me why I only sold 17 CDs today. I need to know the answer. And he was like, oh, we downloaded it 2 weeks ago. And I was like, what? And that's when it first hit me. You have to send music out to press. You have to do it. And someone's going to take that music out of those 200 to 500 albums you send, and they're going to upload it, and everyone's going to hear it, and they're going to get it if they want it. So then I started to say, from a technical aspect, music's just not a product anymore. Yeah. Who makes money on music? Nobody does. So I started kind of sitting back and saying, I think this is the end. I think it's the end of Digital Mindy. I think it's the end of bands, because Digital Mindy was never a product driven entity. We gave our t-shirts away 99% of the time. We give you albums. We didn't care. We just wanted to play, and there's something beautiful about that. But there's also, you're also not going to be able to self-sustain for very long doing that, because you have to be able to look at this thing and say, okay, if I'm getting from city to city, I've got to afford gas to get from city to city to do the thing that the people want me to do. So I started sitting back and saying, okay, in the most boring way possible, what do I think is connecting? What do I want to do? Digital Mindy's over. I've walked out of it. And it just felt like musically it had run its course, it was of that time. And I wanted the freedom to write things that were a little different, maybe push myself as a performer a little bit more. And I said, okay, I've always wanted an excuse to put on a costume and run around the city at night and fulfill my 7-year-old fantasy that maybe I could be Batman one day, So I said, I'm going to make this thing. We're going to do this thing with heroes, and it'll be kind of cool. And cosplay culture is just now starting to boom. It's 2010, I think. Cosplay culture is starting to boom. Marvel movies are huge. I was just like, this Dark Knight had just come out a year or two before or something. I was like, this feels like the right time to do this, to try this. Costume band, and it's not like we're the first. I mean, Slipknot's huge. Like you've had all these huge costume bands throughout all these eras. But for me, it was more like, how do we do a costume band that's just like ingrained in these conventions and in this scene? And, we'll be heroes. Well, no, there's nothing sexy about heroes. Let's be villains. Be a villain. They're the most fun driving part of the story. You're creating a shield for yourself on stage. You can do and say anything. And it's all right, you're a villain, have fun with it. So, that's, I think, the genesis of where it came from. I wrote about half of Evolve or Die was written as Digital Mindy's Evolve or Die. And it was just me kind of, I think, subconsciously sending a message to myself, evolve or die, buddy. It's time to kind of do something a little different. And I started to listen to playbacks on the album, and I would go, this doesn't sound like Digital Mindy. It sounds like something else. I don't know. It's still got the edge a little bit, but just something different about it. So I think that pushed me in that direction. And then I said, like, well, what we'll do is we'll make an entity that can have just a ton of different villains. We'll build and design this show so I can do it alone, or with 2 people or 3 people or 4 people or 14 people. Like it leaves us very flexible and versatile and able to take whatever shows we want, to do whatever we need to do. Sometimes there's a drummer, sometimes there's not, sometimes it's more synth based, sometimes it's more guitar based. But the whole point being to always kind of put on a unique show so that you're not always going, okay, well, this is the part where this happens or that happens, Just keep it interesting.
So
like
now,
snotty in here.
Now, as far as the the music goes and all that, obviously, you're as you said yourself, you're trying to tell a story on stage. So would you consider each performance in and of itself to be more or less a self-contained concept performance or concept album, if you will?
It's really interesting. I think each event leading up to it's definitely a concept performance. Like when you're on your way in a 12-hour drive and your car breaks down and you're all standing out there trying to fix the engine to get to the place, that's a story. Or like, when you're running from the police, that's a story. Or like when, what I'm saying? When we hit the stage, for us, we rehearse a lot. We're very rehearsed. We rarely go off the rails. It'll sometimes seem like we're going off the rails, but we're probably not. My only folly being that I like to talk on stage. So sometimes I'll kind of wander into weird territory of just saying shit. I'm like later on at 3 a.m, laying in the bed in the hotel going like, did I actually say I'm going to hump your mom? Or, like, damn, I think I did, but I feel like, I don't know if I would say it's weird because we're on rails in certain aspects, but then in other aspects, we just do whatever the hell we want. It's like if pants come off, they come off. If keyboards get broken, they get broken. I don't know. We'll figure it out. My one big thing is always you start the show, you finish the show. You don't stop the show. If microphones break, I'm going to scream it at you from the side of the stage. If, backs break, I'm going to keep playing. Not going to stop.
I was about to say there's a video clip on your YouTube channel from 2013 and the stage gave way. Can you give us a little bit of that story? And I'm happy you're okay.
Thank you.
But what happened in this?
So, a little bit of backstory. When we got to the convention, things were moving all right. And I kind of went down there and I saw the hotels build the stage. The convention doesn't build the stage. The AV people don't build the stage. The hotel always provides the stage at these cons. And when I saw it, I was kind of like, that looks kind of rough. There were like potholes in it. It was just a really bad stage. And I kind of told the staff and they were like, meh, whatever. So I pulled my people aside and I said like, okay, let's make sure we're trying to avoid this and this. And of course, I'm the one who walks right back into it, and it was literally that quick. I'm in the middle of, I think Everybody Hates Me. I think it was our second song of that night. I stepped backwards and I just felt the stage go right under my foot and it snapped my knee. So it like twisted my leg in such a weird way that it just completely cracked my knee. I fell over backwards and I hit a light and it just completely re-broke my back from when I was 18 and had my first spinal surgery. So I had had a spinal decompression when I was 18 in 2003. 10 years later, I whacked it so hard when I fell because I went down so fast and so heavy that it was just boom. I was done, and I just felt my body crack. And when that happened and I hit the ground, I couldn't feel my feet. And I was like, uh-oh, this is it. I'm paralyzed. I'm paralyzed in front of a room full of people, you know? And I thought that was going to be, well, that's this. I hope this show's fun. It's the last one. But I'm laying there and I I could feel my feet again. I could feel my toes and wiggle my toes. And then I started moving my legs, and then it was just intense pain. And I was just kind of like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? You know? And I was just like, even if we call for medics right now, it's going to be a minute. I don't want to be that guy that's just laying there dead, you know? So I just pushed myself onto my stomach, and I literally just kind of pulled myself, combat crawled, pulled myself up to the front of the stage because I could move my legs, but it was hard to move them, you know? And I just kept singing. So I didn't know what else to do. So we just kept singing, kept going. About 2 songs later, Victor, the keyboard player at the time, Veronica Jade, her boyfriend just happened to be in the crowd. And he came up and, you know, he kind of, little fun side trivia. He's an actor, actually. He's like on all those shows, Chicago Fire and stuff, which is kind of random and hilarious. You know, he comes up and he kind of helped me up, and he sat me in a chair and helped keep the crowd revved. Cause I knew that, you know, if I just laid there and died, you know, they would be really uncomfortable, and that would just ruin their experience for the night. It's like, well, they came to see it, and it may not be the show they thought they were going to get, but it's a show. You know, I'm sure they remember it, most of them. Paramedics came after a while. The whole crowd just parted, and then the paramedics came through, and I'm singing still, and it's really weird. And then they just kind of strapped me up, and then they took me in, man. You know, that was it. They wheeled me out. And when they got me to the hospital, a doctor came up to me, and he was like, oh my God, what happened? Because I'm still in a full costume, and I'm laying there strapped up. And he's kind of like, what happened? What happened? And I reached my hand out to his coat, and I grabbed it. While I was laying there, I said, I was fighting crime. And he looked down at me, and he was just pissed. He was like, yeah, well, I think crime won. And I was like, hey, fair enough, man.
Oh, I'm trying to picture how that would play out, but I mean, as far as, you know, and I've watched the video, I think it's a 9-minute video you've got there, and just watch it. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, he's still going. He's still going. How much of that was just shock, and how much of that was basically, or was it more a case of I need to do this, or I'm really going to start to feel the hurt I'm in right now?
Yes. The answer to that question is yes to all of it. I think it's a little bit of shock. I think it's adrenaline, pure adrenaline, you know, fear. Maybe you're running from fear. But I've got to be honest and take it to an honest, dark level. Every day of my life, I'm in pain. I wake up in pain. I go to sleep in pain. When I put on my pants, I'm in pain. When I walk down the stairs, I'm in pain. When, you know, I have to bend over and pick something up, I'm in pain. You know, when I drive, I'm in pain from sitting. And then when I stand, I'm in pain. When I rehearse, I'm in pain. When I put on my costume, I'm in pain. So at that point, I had been somebody who had been in pain for the better part of 10 or 11 years, maybe longer, 12 years. I'm pretty used to pain, you know, and I know how to stop it if I have to. I know how to block it out for the most part. You know, there's only one show that I couldn't do because I couldn't do it, you know, and it's because after the spinal fusion that I had, because that second surgery was spinal fusion from that injury, and a knee surgery. They did something to clean out bone fragment and shatter fragment and stuff in the same week. So I had to heal up from that. 3 months later, I was doing Nightmare on Chicago Street in Elgin. You know, I'm back on stage, I'm working outside in the cold. And it's from there, we just ramped straight into tour, playing, con. And, you know, we didn't stop for a long time. The only show that I ever had to stop was in 2014. That was Halloween night. We did a 35 or 36 day contract with a haunted house in Morton Grove called Fear City. And it was a lot of fun. Like we did 2 or 3 shows a night. I would DJ for 6 hours. It was just very cool. I just dug it, and I'd never done anything like it. But we had another convention booked in Minneapolis on Halloween night. So my brother, Fallon Flynn in the band, was sent to do that con as me. So he was in a costume with a B Squad band, and I was in Chicago as me with A Squad band. And we had trained 2 separate bands to do the same show in 2 different locations, with John singing as Mr. Agitator. So about 4 weeks before the 31st show, my tooth cracked. I think I hit it on a mic or something and just cracked. And, it started to feel kind of, like little pain stuff going on. I went into the dentist and he started working on it, started doing a root canal, like all this stuff. They had a cavity in there he found. He's working on it and he goes, wait a second, you had spinal surgery last year. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, I can't finish this. I was like, well, why? He says, well, you have to have clearance from a specialist anytime you have dental work done and you have metal in your body that's not like a 1.5 years old. And I was like, I never do that. He said, it can cause a spinal infection. It can kill you. And I was like, well, now we're already in it. So why does it matter? And he's like, no, I got to stop this, cap it, let you go. So it took me 2 weeks to see a specialist. Who then sent me to a GP who then said, yeah, he can do that. So about 3 days before that show, my face is swollen because that tooth is so infected just from being open. And I go in there. That's the only show I canceled because I just couldn't do it. I went up, I tried to sing during sound check, and I couldn't even open my mouth. So at that point I knew, I was like, well, I'm done. I can't do it, And I had to go to the owners, and I just felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And they were like, nah, man, it's great. It's okay. But that's it. That's the only one.
Now on your Facebook page, talking about being in, basically chronic pain for the last, 20 years or so, you basically, openly pontificated that, the creation of Mr. Agitator was kind of a way to deal with all of that. So as you were creating this character, what was the thought process?
Well, I feel like this character is absolutely a shield, and it's an amalgamation of a lot of different influences in my life. A lot of things artistically that have always influenced me or that I've always enjoyed, whether it's in pop culture medium. Did I lose you there? Oh no, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm like popping in and out. In pop culture medium, all of those kind of things. It's very much, I loved Phantom of the Opera growing up. I loved Batman. I loved, Darkman. I loved all of these things. I loved Nine Inch Nails. I loved Depeche Mode. It's like, how can I jam all this together and make that? And, for a young boy internally, I mean, like, what's the biggest shield you can do is wear a cape and a mask and run around, So absolutely, I think that that's a 100% valid observation. And I mean, I guess you're reading my own observation back to me. I don't think about it as much, but it's very much true. I feel like you put the costume on and just the mental aspect of pain killing. It's just like you stand up a little bit straighter, you have a little bit more of an edge. You walk a little bit faster. You run a little bit faster. There's something about that. There is something about that idea of becoming an idea to someone else that kind of forces you as a human being to push some of that back and become that idea more. They play with you. They play on it. They give it to you. You give it back to them. Right. So I think it is absolutely a natural painkiller in that way. And I do think it absolutely was a shield to deal with some of the pain and everything that was going on.
And of course, playing at conventions, it's been said in numerous, documentaries about conventions that people do use cosplay to, not just, as an enjoyment, but to, for a moment, separate themselves from things that they're dealing with. So when you're at these shows and you see these people there in costume and whatnot, do you hope that, they're kind of on that same level where it's just everyone knows, for that, however long the concert is, it's a safe place. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about whatever is ailing you. And as far as, the V is for Villains fans, how much of your story do they know? And do they draw strength from that, seeing you on stage, working through all of your pain?
I mean, I think to answer the first part of that question, yes, I want people to lose themselves in their identity. I want them to lose themselves in it, because I feel like identity is what we create. You're not just the sum of the parts that were handed to you. You are something that you have created as well. You chose to wear glasses. You chose to shape your hair the way you do, to have your amazing Crow poster in the background. Those are all choices. Those are all things that contribute to the identity of you as a person, right? And you're showing people, when you put that identity out there, who you are internally, the things that you align with, the things that you care about, the people you care about, the kind of art maybe you enjoy. So I feel like those ideas, even if they're subconscious, are very calculated. And I love it when people lose themselves in this idea that you don't have to be what society tells you you are. You can be who you decide to be. And that sometimes in the fire, you do forge the best version of yourself, And I think that that's not a me message. It's not a message coming from me. Maybe I'm relaying it, but it's a message that I found somewhere else, just in life, just in the media that we consume, just in these heroes' journey stories that we read and write, and they're a big part of in our culture, So I think that, to me, that's a very huge part of why I do what I do, is to tell people, hey, acknowledge it. You're going to die. And I hope it's not a painful one, but it could be. I'm going to die. All of this is going to be over at some point. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy it while we've got it. Let's do it together. Let's have a good time. That's the whole point to me. That's my purpose, is to kind of get in the middle of these stuffy ass people that try to tell you who you have to be and what you can and can't like. I'm not a fan of that. So, to answer that part of the question, yeah, I love it when people get into that character mindset and they get into that mode. If something that I'm doing inspires somebody to feel better about their situation in life, then my mission's accomplished. Then I've accomplished my mission, because all I'm doing really in that regard is paying forward the things that the pop culture that I've consumed that has made a difference in my life has done for me, right? I feel like we all, as storytellers and as artists and as writers, we all take the stories that were given to us and we retell them, right? And that goes for music, art, poetry. It goes for anything. If you like, I've had people come up to me, and it's mind shattering to me that they're like, oh, I love V.S. Villains. I love V.S. Villains. I'm like, oh, well, you're 14. You're going to love Nine Inch Nails. And they're like, no, that's old. And I'm like, my head explodes. And I'm like, wait, I don't get that, because I love this thing. And I'm just kind of reinterpreting kind of what they're doing to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then I know many people back in the 90s that were like, no, it's just David Bowie. Oh, okay. Well, Nine Inch Nails is just David Bowie for the 90s. Oh, okay, I guess. I don't see it personally, but I guess. No. Then I'd go back and listen. Oh, wait a second. Yeah. It is kind of like you can see the tree of evolution. And those artists, I think it's very short. I think you're slighting them greatly to say, oh, that's just this of this era. No, they're their own artists. They're their own unique entities, But I do think it's interesting that you can see the roots and you can follow them and trace them back up. So I feel like, to me, yeah, if anybody gets anything out of what we do and it makes them laugh or smile or forget pain for 5 minutes, mission accomplished. I can sleep well that night.
This is the Meiju Mixtape Podcast. We are talking with Mr. Agitator, Nicholas Santiago from V is for Villains. We're going to step away for 2 seconds and we'll come back right after this.
These days, everyone and their cat has a podcast about the entertainment industry. Am I right? But few shows have as much fun doing it as Rico and the Man with Rob Traegler and Peter Martino. Yes, New Jersey meets California in this bi-coastal, hilarious show where two old college buddies take shots at all things entertainment. With almost 20 years of tumultuous hot takes, Rob and Peter's on-air chemistry, witty banter, and irreverent discussions make you feel like you're hanging out with old friends. Rico and the Man is a laugh-out-loud look at Hollywood's past, present, and troubling future. With special guests, trivia, listener feedback, and comedy bits, this no-holds-barred podcast is the perfect distraction from your everyday troubles. With new episodes every week, Rob and Peter invite you to laugh along as they praise, pummel, and pick apart show business. Don't miss Rico and the Man with Rob Traegler and Peter Martino. Available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and more.
All right, welcome back to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. My guest today is Mr. Agitator, Nicholas Santiago, lead singer of V is for Villains. Now, as I was going and doing my research, I found this picture that you had posted of your dad in a superhero costume. So how much of his influence led you to where you are today?
Most of it. I mean, I've been trained for this job since I was a kid, watching him do that, and sometimes I do find the similarities in a strange way. He was running around driving a white sports car in a superhero costume. I'm doing the same thing. It's weird, but I think it's like, absolutely was always around it. I was always around music. I was always around art. I was always watching him do special effects. My father is a complete Renaissance man. I mean, he paints, look at a little artwork right here. He painted this. It's the Digital Mindy Meet Mr. Agitator album cover, disc, and back sleeve. And that's really just the painting that he did for me. He does all of our artwork, our graphics, our websites. My father is my partner, and we've been very seriously calculating and building this thing for a long time together. And I bounce all my ideas off him. Hey, what do you think of this? I'll send him tracks as I'm writing them. And he's honest, he'll tell me if he's like, that's not the thing, man. Maybe you leave that. We'll keep working on that, but if he loves something, he's just the biggest cheerleader and biggest supporter of it. So I think, to say that my father was an influence is an understatement. He was an influence and he still is. And I think, to me, like I said, he's a true collaborator. He's the shadow villain that nobody sees. Well, they don't see as much, but he's there in everything we do as a major collaborator.
Now, let's take a look at the young Agitator, if you will. So before creating Digital Mindy, what were you listening to that kind of helped, inspire and evolve your own personal music taste in creating that music?
I mean, I think like everyone else in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, I listened to a lot of Stabbing Westward, 9 Inch Nails, Depeche Mode. I really liked that stuff. There was something about synthesizers in particular that just always stuck to me, and especially if you got a beat or a groove, something that was just 4/4 with a kick and a snare that had an arpeggiated synthesizer in it. I just love that sound. And I always did. And I didn't know what it was. I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, for the most part. I'm from Mississippi. And you don't know what that is down there, especially back then, pre-Spotify, pre-Napster, pre-any digital anything. You had to go to the record store and pray to God they had the cassette you wanted. And, when you're a kid and you like that sort of thing in a kind of a smaller city, in the South, it's what is that even? Nobody even seems to really know what it is or where to find it or anything like that. So it's kind of like the term industrial didn't come into my head until we moved to Chicago when I was a kid. And somebody was like, oh yeah, it's industrial music. It's industrial music. It's industrial music. Oh shit, it has a name. So I always loved that. But on the same token, I grew up listening primarily to film scores. I love film scores. I love composers. I still follow their work regularly. I love Philip Glass, Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, all of it, all that stuff, and my father raised me listening to Frank Sinatra, Billy Joel, Elton John, Blues Brothers, like a lot of great classic stuff. Beatles, love the Beatles. So, I grew up listening to it. I think it's probably not a huge mystery. Like, I wasn't listening to anything that was probably considered like, oh man, that's mind blowing. But yeah, that was my thing, really.
I do see, because when you think about, as you were mentioning, that time in the mid to late 90s, you had Nine Inch Nails, you had Stepping Westward, you had, maybe, even to another degree, smaller bands like Prick and Babylon Zoo and bands like Prick. That. Yeah. Oh, that was such a great album. Like I remember, I still have the cassette here. That's
amazing.
Never let go of anything. A great album. But I love the fact that you brought up, like listening to, artists like Billy Joel, and because with your music, you have that, very much, Stabbing Westward, Prick type sound, but you also have the storytelling of Billy Joel, which, you don't really see, or at least didn't really see too much of that in that 90s era, industrial music. So would you sit there and say, for the most part, it is, in that concept album kind of vein where you're trying to tell the story all the way through?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I at least always have a theme for each album, the thing that I'm kind of zoomed in on and focusing on. And what I like as a songwriter, and I'm going to sidetrack really quick and just say, for comparing anything that I do to Billy Joel, I appreciate that. Holy shit. It's a huge compliment to me. Thank you. But, I always look at our songs as anthology horror stories or little anthology tales of strangeness, where if you can really get into the lyrics and dissect it, it'll make sense to you. I don't want to tell people what to feel about them, but I do think very narratively. And in my head, when I'm writing, especially lyrics, it's usually like, it's such a great puzzle. That's what I love about songwriting. It's like one of the most complicated puzzles you could delve into. Well, it's got to be 3 minutes. It's got to have a rhyme. It's got to, work in the span of a verse. It's got to roll off the tongue. It has to have a decent title, and the music has to flow with it. If you mess up any one of these elements, your song's done, So to me, songwriting is such an interesting thing in those regards, where it's like such a big puzzle, and it engages me, and I fire off on all cylinders. Every time I'm writing, I'm just like in that mode and in that zone. And it's fun for me. It's a lot of fun. But you have certain songs that we do where if I didn't tell you the greater meaning, maybe you'd never know. Like I've had a lot of kids come up to me and go like, what's the Black Swan love song? The hell is that? And I'm like, well, a Black Swan event is like an event of strange randomness, but is connected and interlinked. I said like, a man getting hit by a car and then his twin brother getting hit by the same car the next day in the same spot. That would be a Black Swan event. So, the idea is there. The lyrics basically tells the story of stigmatic lovers. You cut one, the other one bleeds. Why? I don't know. Just thought it was an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea. And I can see it in my head when I'm writing, almost like a movie. It just kind of connects to me that way. I'll have kids come up to me at times, especially in contemporary society, and go, "Broken Doll, that song's so misogynistic, and it's it hates women." And I'm like, yeah, that guy's an asshole, And they're like, yeah, wait, you're that guy. I'm like, that's not me. It's a story. I'm telling a story. We never even said that it was a guy who was saying all of those things. I leave that up to you. But that person, Mr. Agitator's vocals and the concept of storytelling, he's a narrator. I'm a narrator of stories. I'm more of a Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone of V is for Villain songs than I am an active player. That's how I always see it. Imagine you walked into a circus and you had a seat, and then I just took you as a ringleader on this ride and pulled each element out and said, oh, well, this is the Broken Doll. Oh, well, this is our Black Swan love song. In my head, that's how it always is. It's very rarely me, that I'm writing about as person or character. And I guess maybe, but oddly, my personal life informs these kind of strange observations. And then I put a character on it. And then in that character, I'm like, well, hey, there you go. That's my through line. I don't know if that makes too much sense, but that's what it is.
It does. It reminds me of, and I'm going to draw a very different comparison here. I remember watching one of the Kevin Smith Q&A DVDs that he had put out, and one of the audience members had brought up, and if I remember correctly, it was. It's one of the characters in Chasing Amy, talking very misogynistically, and Kevin Smith's response was, "Yeah, but the idiot said it." So the fact
exactly.
But the fact that you're writing these songs in character, are people missing the point that no, this isn't me. This is a character in a story.
Yeah, and I think that as a whole, I think audiences miss that point all the time. The character of Kanye West is not who that man really is when he takes off his sunglasses and he takes off his coat. He's performing for you the moment he leaves his house, and people forget that. That's a lifelong dedication to art and to what you're doing as a performer. And, music to me, let me tell you what makes music so interesting to me in that respect. It is such a personal experience. When you listen to an album, you're hearing my voice say things to you. So that automatically makes you assume that that's how I feel about it. When narratively speaking, that's just not the case, So I think Kevin Smith was absolutely correct to say, well, yeah, that guy's a dickhead, because the character clearly was. And to me, that's the sign of a good writer. You're not thinking about you and how the audience is going to see you as a person. You're just telling the story the way that it would be told. Somebody who's ignorant about topics like that would respond like Jason Lee's character did. I think that's the correct way to write it. And I think in today's world, the art suffers for the politics and the social medium all the time. People are so scared to say much of anything that sometimes artists elect to say nothing, and rightfully so. I'm not coming down on for it. I mean, I get it, but I also know not everybody has a shield, so it makes it a little bit harder for some people to put their faces and names attached to something like that. Me, I always tend to go more towards the subversive. It's just interesting to me. I think, go see your favorite action movie or your favorite drama and remove the negative element of drama or action. And what do you have? You don't have a story. So to me, I think that that's a great observation. And I think that makes him a good writer, in my opinion.
Now, you said that music, of course, is a very personal experience. So let's take you back to one of your earliest, personal experiences with music. So do you remember the first time ever going to a record store with your own money? Not just, you got, an album given to you, but with your own money, went to the record store, bought yourself your very first album. Do you remember which album that was?
Yes, I do. Mortal Kombat Annihilation soundtrack on cassette in 1997.
I'm trying to remember. I was going to say, I'm trying to remember what was on that.
It was okay. It was an okay album. It was all right. The movie was horrible. The album was pretty good. There's a lot of industrial shit. And that's where you went to find it when you were a kid living in Biloxi. You got it from movie soundtracks that were a little bit wiser than you were. I loved movie soundtracks when I was a kid because it opened up doors to new bands and new artists and new things that you just couldn't find any other way. They were playing them on MTV. They weren't playing them on the radio. So you could listen to something like, oh shit, Vile, they're kind of cool. That's pretty cool. Or you could listen to something and go like, oh, that's Pig, that's Watts, that's, that's Nights of Red. That's, like all these kind of cool things that just weren't out there, So to me, I think that I'm pretty sure that was the first soundtrack I ever bought. But then after that, I was, I would do everything I could to just buy whatever I could get my hands on. I would save lunch money for weeks, stuff like that. So, I think that was the first one.
You think about those, late 90s, early 2000s, and there were some not so great movies, but they had these phenomenal soundtracks, the Spawn album, which was,
I loved the Spawn album.
Dracula 2000.
Yep.
Like there were all of these Judgment Night. Yeah. Judgment Night was out there too, where the movies, okay, right?
Right.
But the soundtracks, Are we missing that today? Because I mean, like,
Yes.
movies are coming out, and yes, there's these phenomenal scores. I think
Right.
the art of scoring music has maybe never been better, because there are some phenomenal scores that are out there. But the soundtrack, like the album defining soundtrack, are we missing that right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, do I think it'll ever come back? No, but we're definitely missing it. I love it. I miss it all the time, where I'm like it, and you have to be, I think, of that time for it to kick in your head and go like, the sound, oh wait, that's not going to be a thing. Because the moment that the labels stopped making money off of selling CDs and selling cassettes and whatever the medium is, was when that died. They were just like, well, it's just not profitable anymore, so we're just not going to do it. But I think in lieu of soundtracks, you can still find playlists. That's something. Maybe that can turn you on to some music you like. It's just a never-ending playlist. Some of those things are like 8 days long and it has a bunch of stuff in it you don't want. But I think, yeah, the art form of the soundtrack, and like when you had one, like you said, like Spawn, that was so well conceived and put together that you walked away going, Spawn, that movie kind of sucked. But man, that cassette's still in my car, like so 25 years later or something. So I don't know. I think, I miss it. I don't know if it'll ever come back, but I miss it.
When you think about, the nature of, your albums, how they're put together, how they sound and all that, and you think about, how they lend themselves to visuals so well. And, you do have a couple of music videos out there, but have you ever envisioned the possibility of a V is for Villains rock musical movie? Something maybe akin to Repo the Genetic Opera.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we waffle back and forth sometimes about if we ever did tell that story, would it be a fictitious story? And then we kind of usually settle back on like, God, my life's so fucking weird. As it is, that we probably wouldn't have to tell a fictitious story. Probably the truth is more dramatic than the fiction, any fiction we come up with. I'd be like time traveling, like weird stuff. And they'd be like, nah, man, nah. That time you broke your back,
So we're going to put you on the spot here. Okay. It's an end or situation. You can have a V is for Villains movie musical based on your music, or a V is for Villains comic book series. Which one would you prefer to have?
Oh man, that's tough. Now in the movie musical version, is it going to be like awesome? Is it going to be like high budget? Is Matt Damon going to play me and I get to just go and watch it?
You know what? I now want to hear your idea for this, because Matt Damon is Mr. Agitator. I'm completely sold. Tell me more.
All right. I see. That's what I'm saying. I'm sold. I'm a big movie buff. So for me, I'm like, well, shit. I don't have to make it. I don't have to do it. I just get to go watch it. And hopefully it'll be like The People versus Larry Flint, or one of those great biopics where it's like accurate enough to be honest, but still made up enough that I could watch it and go, that didn't happen. Or I could watch it and go like, yeah, Matt Damon jumped off a roof and was like swinging on shit. Yeah, they got Jason Bourne to play a crippled man. I mean, so I'd probably go with the movie musical, but damn, a comic book series, that's something that would hit my heart very heavy, because I just love comics, man. I still collect to this day. I love them.
Okay, so it's gotten to the point of the show where it is time to ask you, Mr. Agitator, if you had to introduce yourself to a total stranger, but instead of saying, hi, I'm Mr. Agitator, no, really, I'm Mr. Agitator, you hand them a mixtape, and on that tape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape, and why are those songs there?
Jesus Christ. Well, you better pull in, because we're going to be here for 5 days. No, I think if there was a mixtape of songs from my life, man, geez, it's getting hard. I would give them Villains Never Die. Say, here's the mixtape of my life, baby. I wrote it. And they would go, what the hell is this? I don't want to pay you for this. I'd be like, give me that CD back. You can't have it. No, I'm kidding. Mixtape of my life from other artists. I mean, there would definitely be Frank Sinatra. Definitely. I think, man, there would definitely be Beatles. There would definitely be Nine Inch Nails. They were, definitely Nine Inch Nails, because it just really connected with me, as it did a lot of people. But then I went, use that as a gateway to find the more underground industrial stuff, like I said, like Knights of Ebb, like Pig, those are great things. And because I toured with Raymond back in 2006, that's a big soundtrack to my life, was getting to watch him do those songs every night, going like, wow, this is great stuff. Man, my father's music, the stuff that he wrote, was always there in the background. But film scores, so many film scores, like I just absolutely love the score to Road to Perdition, to Meet Joe Black. Absolutely love the scores to, Dark Knight Rises, particularly, I really liked. And, I'm a big fan of Perfume by Tom Tikva and Pale 3. It's a great score. I like, if I had to, like, now I'm going to write this down and I'm going to send it to you as an essay.
Okay, so we know that, when it comes to Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor eventually moved into doing movie soundtracks as well. Still doing Nine Inch Nails, but doing movie soundtracks like Lost Highway and other films. If the opportunity ever arose, would you consider doing movie music scores?
Absolutely. I've actually written some music for games, TV, stuff like that, as Nicholas Santiago. My most recent one was on PBS recently. That was with Dwayne Buford, who was keyboard player for Ministry for a long time. He and we write stuff together a lot. We have for like the last 10 or 11 years. That was Mandela in Chicago, is a documentary for Nelson Mandela. I got to score that, which was fun. We've just done a bunch of different stuff, like little strange offshoot things. So if somebody came up to me and said, hey, we want you to write a score for a film, I would be game. 150%. It would be actually a highlight for me. It'd be a great thing to do, because I love the idea of telling a story with music. That the lyrics don't have to be the only thing that tells the story. But, I've always said, if you put the wrong score in the right film, it's going to ruin the film. It's just, people don't think about how much the music informs you, and how much it does for you as a viewer. It's such an important piece of the puzzle.
All right. Final question here.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the choice to take the character of Mr. Agitator and put it in one episode of any comic book series as like the villain of that edition, who is Mr. Agitator's nemesis? Who is he fighting in that comic book?
Sorry, this is man, like you just fractured my mind. It's in a million pieces right now. Who would Mr. Agitator fight in a comic book?
I have now broken you.
You've broken me. I feel like Mr. Agitator would fight Batman.
I could see it.
Mr. Agitator would definitely fight Batman.
I think it'd be a perfect fit in like the rogues gallery of that series. Yeah.
I would take it. I don't know. I don't think Mr. Agitator's goal would be to beat Batman. I think Mr. Agitator's goal would be to teach Batman something that would make Batman a better Batman.
Fascinating. Oh my God, I love that concept.
All right, I'm writing it. You call DC. I'm going in there tomorrow.
Dear DC, please, now that you've watched or listened to the entire interview, make this happen, okay?
Let's do it. We're writing that book.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you.
Where can we listen to V's for Villains, and what have you got coming up on the schedule as far as the tour goes?
Well, we're going to be playing at Anime Magic coming up. Then we're going to be at the Bottom Lounge on August 28th. That's in Chicago. And that is a 17 and over show. We're going to be at Dragon Con following that. Man, we've got so many shows coming up, I can't even list them all. We're going to be playing through 2022. We're going to be playing at Dark Side of the Con. It's going to be a great time.
And I really hope that the numbers do hold off and these shows can happen, because what you're doing and the conventions for everybody, like, it is so good to have everything back. So thank you so much for this. And thank you to our listeners for listening to this edition of the Made You a Mixtape podcast. If you're listening to us on an audio streaming service, you can watch this entire interview over up on YouTube. However, if you're watching this interview on YouTube, you got to see Mr. Agitator, so that's awesome. But you can download this episode, listen to us on the go on any audio streaming service. This is Made You a Mixtape. I'm your host, Jason. We'll see you next time. Take care.